Well, welcome everyone to our Curious Intervals Hera Members Exhibition Artist Talk. We have three of the exhibiting artists here to speak with us today. We have Catherine Armistead, Carrie Usmar, and Abigail Wamboldt. This is some of these artists' first time showing at Hera, and some of our artists have showed here many of times. And I think one of the most interesting things about this members exhibition is that we have some of our newest members exhibiting here, and we also have one of our founding members exhibiting as well. So we have quite a few years of experience here. And it's been really great to put this all together. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sonia, the gallery director, and it's been a pleasure working with these artists and putting this member show together. This show opened on March 2nd, and it is up through the rest of the month till March 30th. And if you would like to see this in person, we're open Wednesday through Friday, 1 to 5, Saturdays, 10 to 4. And we'll have a closing reception on March 30th, which will be our third annual Spring Bash fundraiser. So we'll be open 6 to 9 that Saturday. We'll have a wonderful event with live music and auction. So definitely come down. So the way this talk is going to go today, we will have each artist will talk about their work for about 10 minutes or so. We're going in alphabetical order, and then we're going to save all end of all the artists. So note any questions that you have and save them till the end, and we'll have a quick group discussion at the end of these presentations. And the last thing I want to say before we begin is just thank you to our sponsors, to Riska, and to all of our friends of Hera, because it's with your support that we have kept our doors open for 50 years. And with this continued support, we're able to run these exhibitions and keep this programming going. And we hope that we'll be able to do it for another 50 years. So with that, I would like to pass it off to Kat Armistead to open our artist talk tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sonia. And first, I just want to say thank you so much to Hera Gallery. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to show at such a sort of like an old and well-established institution. And I'm very grateful to be a member and to be showing alongside so many really fantastic artists as well. So I'm Kat. I'm a mixed media artist, and as you can kind of see from some of the images in the show, I work across metalworking, some jewelry making, painting, and other sculptural methods. And I have this picture of lichen over here because that's a constant source of inspiration for me. I'm interested in sort of like lichen, mycelium, and moss, and these kind of small enterprising organisms that end up creating a lot of the environments that we live in, particularly where I live in the Northeast. You can go to the next slide. So I have a lot of work in the show that's from a few different years. I thought I'd go kind of like reverse chronologically. So starting from the most recent, this is a painting I finished right before installing it in the show. It's called Ripples, and you can see a source of inspiration on the left here.
Oh, I think we lost her.
Kat, we can't hear you.
Oh, I think she just dropped out of the call. She must have lost connection. I'll text her and just give her a minute and see if she can come on. right. I'll give her one more minute and see if her internet's working better. And maybe if she needs a little time, Carrie, we can skip to you and come back to Kat. All right. Carrie, if that's okay with you, I think we'll skip over to you and
Works for me.
come back after. All right. Let me exit out and grab viewer slide. Okay, here we go. Take two.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie. I also wanted to thank Hera Gallery and Sonia and Marissa for putting together the show, and it's just been wonderful being part of this community. I am a new member at Hera, and I'm just grateful to show my work with so many talented artists. I saw the show Monday night and was just really inspired how it all came together. I wanted to start off by reading a quote. Making art now means working in the face of uncertainty. It means living with doubt and contradiction, doing something no one much cares whether you do, and for which there may be neither audience nor reward. Making the work you want to make means finding nourishment within the work itself. It's from Art and Fear. Highly recommend that book if you haven't read it. But I feel like as an artist, I go through waves, and sometimes I just want to quit and I don't know what I'm doing. And then around the corner, something amazing happens and I'm feeling creative again. So I don't know, this quote really just stuck with me. So, sorry. I've always been compelled to document my life experience. When I was 13, I made my first scrapbook and I was hooked. Then my dad got a Sony camcorder and I started recording video. I took it with me everywhere and captured friends hanging out, birthdays, and lip sync videos. And thankfully at the time, you couldn't share them with the world on social media. So the image on the left is me doing a video with my friend. And the image on the right is my baby book that my parents made. And funny enough that I don't really have baby books for my kids. So it's interesting to see this. When I look at the images, these are some images that my dad took when he first got a digital camera. And I used to think, why is he taking pictures of his chili or our house? It's so boring. Where's all the smiling people? But now I understand. Since he documented the monotony, I get more of a feel for who he is and what he cared about at that time. His images bring up memories of what growing up was like, and I can share with my children not only the highlights of my life, but the reality. All of this history explains my current fascination with documenting the realities of family life and mothering. It is rare to see an image of a mother and a father folding clothes or cooking dinner. When I am making work, I ask myself, what do I wish I had a photo of? And what aspects of womanhood are unseen and deserve more attention? And this is an image from my recent residency experience in New York. I was making a book and sewing the pages together, and I just really wanted to capture the domesticness of sewing and also part of my experience just to remember it. In 2012, I became a mother. I documented my kids smiling at birthdays, monthly baby photos, memorable moments, things you would find in a traditional scrapbook. I had always hoped I'd be able to be a stay-at-home mom, and when it came down to it, childcare was unaffordable, and it made the most sense for me to stay home with our kids. I didn't think it was possible to make art and mother at the same time. I've heard many stories from other artists that they kept their pregnancy a secret for so long in fear of people in the industry treating them differently. And at the time, there wasn't room in the art world for artist parents. Things are starting to change more now, but that was back in 2012. Sorry, can you go back one? I wanted to share a few images from a small series I made after I had my daughter. I'd like to preface this and say I never thought these were a series or even art, but looking back on them, I've had some reflections, and this is my daughter Celia at 1 month old. My mom collects dolls, and so I grew up with them around the house. And one day an idea came to me, and I jumped on it, and this is called Sleeping with the Enemy. People probably thought I was crazy and funny, but a little crazy when I shared this image on Facebook and said, "Where's Celia?" I probably was a little crazy with all the postpartum hormones, but I look at these images now and realize this is one way I navigated that first year of being home alone during the day and caring for a baby 24/7. Creating has always been the way I've navigated challenges and change, and these images are evidence of that. And this is one of the last images I took because then I got pregnant with my second child and life got even more crazy. But I love to look back on these images, and my kids think it's funny. Flash forward, it's 2021, and I took this image called Laundry Specialist. I just received a copy of our tax returns in the mail and noticed my occupation said house person. I guess that was a common term used at the time. I think now I'm a homemaker, but at the time I was a house person. But I really thought, house person? Is that really a thing? I'd never heard that term before. And I just wanted to read an excerpt from my diary to you guys after how I was feeling after I got that letter. It's pretty lonely dealing with hot, tired kids with no one to talk to. And yeah, I sometimes feel frustrated how good it must feel when my husband says, "Hey, I did a huge deal today," and my boss is really proud of me. And compared to me saying, "Hey, I washed all our laundry," or "I changed the nastiest poopy diaper," or "I managed to clean and vacuum while caring for 4 kids." It doesn't feel like it's worth mentioning, which breaks my heart. I know it's worth mentioning, but in reality, for whatever reason, staying at home with the kids just doesn't feel enough. I felt really emotional, like I wanted to do something or say something and raise awareness to the role I've been doing for 10 years at this point. So I got an idea to capture images of myself doing all the jobs that mothers do. And from there, the idea evolved and evolved and evolved some more to the series Resume of a Stay-at-Home Mom. Using a tripod and remote, I captured these ordinary moments that show joy and solitude and sacrifice that I felt daily, cataloging all the skills that I gained, forcing people to reevaluate the role. The process of choosing a title for each image that corresponded to a skill on a resume made me feel seen and valued in an often invisible and thankless role. Now that my children are of school age, people often ask, "What will you do with all your free time?" And I sort of laugh and get annoyed when I'm asked that question, but I still feel this pressure sometimes to defend my time. And I thought about finding part-time work, and I found my old resume from 2012, and I wondered what people put down for a gap in employment on their resume. So I Googled, do I put stay-at-home mom on my resume? And found many articles that say not to put that role in your resume, but to highlight volunteer positions instead, as if a stay-at-home mother should be volunteering during her average 97-hour work week. Then I read a study from American Sociological Review that says stay-at-home mothers are half as likely to get a job interview than unemployed mothers. Employers said they viewed stay-at-home parents as less reliable, less deserving, and less committed to work than unemployed parents. And according to a study from Harvard Business Review, women who spent 3 years or more out of the workforce lose 37% of their earning power. These articles and statistics furthered my belief that my role as a stay-at-home mother is not valued in society. I'm going to go through the images from my series now and share the titles with you as we go along so that you can understand what I did. This one's called Thrives in Wild Environments. Ensures safe and on-time arrival. Always available. implements a cleanup protocol, delegates tasks, cultivates patience in junior team members, optimizes efficiency, demonstrates flexibility, understands importance of physical and mental health, excels in effective communication, strives to make time for fun, negotiates for optimal resolutions, actively listens, recognizes ambivalence, multitasks effectively, leads organizational processes, and loves unconditionally. And so that's my series. And I just wanted to share with everyone, if anyone in the audience is curious how I got to this point while raising 4 kids, I have to say it has been a lot of hard work, determination, and vulnerability. And critique groups have been crucial to my journey of creating this body of work. It's been since 2021 that I've focused on it. And I also look for classes to take with artists in the community that I look up to, sort of mentors, or have a special skill I want to learn. And that's really like got me this far. And even from the first pictures to now, my work has grown incredibly. I have made a lot of mistakes and applied and spent money on shows and awards and grants that weren't the right choice. I've been rejected a lot, but I've also had some yeses. And I just wanted to encourage everybody to keep going.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Catherine, are you with us to continue your talk?
Yes, I am back.
Yay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Glad to have you back. Okay. Oops. Where are we?
I think we were 4. Perfect.
Here we go.
Awesome.
Jumping back in. Anyway.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I think right as I was getting cut out, I was talking about this piece, Ripples. This is a continuation in a series where I've been playing around with what I call window panes, which are these vellum sort of shapes that I cut out by hand and then glue and place onto a larger piece. I'm pretty notoriously bad at editing my work, and so this is a way for me kind of once I get pretty far along into a piece to bring back a little bit of space and kind of levity to the painting. You can go to the next slide now. And I take inspiration from a lot of different sources. This piece on the left is called Percussion, and it has several different elements that I was exploring. The kind of most notable in my mind is a play on these street lamps I saw when I was in Amsterdam, where they sort of hang suspended over the streets. And I just was really fascinated with that. I found it to be a really interesting just a really interesting way of lighting a roadway. And I wanted to incorporate that into this painting. So you can see some of the red streetlights. And this and the next painting I'll talk about both are entirely unplanned. So a lot of the moving through these pieces, it takes me a long time, and I kind of have to evaluate what the next step is and try to figure things out in a really active way. But it also helps me stay sort of in an experimental place with my process, which is important, especially when it comes into play with, or as compared to some of my more sculptural works or jewelry works where you really need to plan out every single step. I use painting as a space where I can experiment and play around with different ideas. And you can go to the next slide for a detailed picture of this. I also take a lot of inspiration from Hayao Miyazaki's work and Studio Ghibli. I find just a lot of really interesting visual elements there, a lot of symbology. And so the blue sort of starbursts in this piece are very inspired by, in several of his movies, there'll be a character sort of holding a ball of light. And sometimes that symbolizes the self, sometimes it symbolizes kind of the universality of human experience. And so I try to bring sort of thoughtful elements and signals into even my really abstract paintings. And I also work, oh, I'm sorry, can you go back? Uh, I also work with a lot of recycled materials in my practice across different mediums. So you can see the red elements in the top left corner of this sort of zoomed in shot, and in the bottom right, those are garlic bags, some of the like plastic netting that comes when you get garlic at the grocery store. So I'm always interested in like, how can I incorporate different textures and kind of unexpected colors into my work? And I, like Carrie, I also take a ton of classes. It helps me stay in a space of learning and trying things and staying comfortable with failure, which I think is a really crucial part of being an artist of any kind. And last spring, I took a welding class and I created this piece that's called Not Yet. And it was inspired by sort of an idea I had for an asymmetrical vase form, but one that was kind of aggressive at the top and sort of gesturing towards the sky. So each of these panels, I believe it's 18 in total, I welded together and then sort of combined the two sides and did a lot of heating and hammering and heating and hammering to get it into the shape that I wanted. So that was a really, really fun activity. And just it helped me grow sort of my level of comfort in different mediums at different scales. And it's definitely, there's an element to a lot of my work that has to do with like the meditative nature of making. And I think I was surprised that TIG welding is actually really, really meditative and you have to be really, really focused. So similar to something like soldering, which I do in my jewelry work, it just helped me tap into the current moment and really concentrate on one aspect of putting something large together. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. And this is a jewelry piece that's in the exhibition. This piece is called Bloom, and this is referencing those natural forms I was talking about earlier. It's electroformed copper with an enamel coating on it. The enamel is a space where I like to experiment a lot. So this is actually fired in a kiln, and I fired it longer than you're technically supposed to. So you get a lot of gradation in the color and a lot of variation there. It's with Swarovski crystals and a handmade silver attachment there. And the Swarovski crystals are repurposed. I love working with previously owned jewelry and different things like that, trying to bring things into a new light. And again, taking a material that's so commonly used in jewelry, but essentially trying to disguise it or have it work in a way that's a little bit more unconventional is a big part of my practice when I'm making jewelry and adornment objects. And this is a piece that's called Seafoam, where you can see some of these different ideas working together. Again, this is a handmade silver chain. Thinking back to the welding note, it's a very meditative act. It's also, there's an element of carefulness and attention that requires that I really enjoy. And it just helps the whole piece kind of hang together, pun intended. And this piece has silver, brass, recycled plastic. It has styrofoam that I am playing around with here, setting as more of like a precious stone. And that's mica on the left side of the pendant itself. This is a piece that was like, I think I broke it like 5 times when I was making it. I had a lot of different ideas about how I wanted it to turn out. But, oh, can you go back? I'm sorry. But it ended up kind of coming together in a way when I finally stopped being so attached to my idea of how the piece should look and what it should contain, it started to talk to me. And, you know, I started to assemble these different ideas together in a way that worked better than what I had originally planned. So a lot of times in my work, I'm referencing things that Annie Albers talks a lot about in her essays on materials, where it's very much a conversation between the material I'm working with and myself. And a lot of times I find myself being too attached to my ideas, and certain materials will push me into unexpected directions. You can go to the next slide now. Thank you. This painting is also in the show. This is called Turbulence, and like the previous one, this was actually totally unplanned. It's a mix of watercolor, pen and ink, those window panes made out of vellum that I mentioned, marker, gouache, and then there's some cutout shapes as well. And I made this over the course of several months, kind of coming back to it in different, sort of with different emotions present. And I think that really comes out in the final product. And yeah, it's just kind of like moving through turbulence, seeing different emotions, lots of things that combine to create the human experience. But it's very abstract also, because I am very interested in what other people see in my work, sometimes more so than what I'm trying to get across. So I like to work abstractly, because I think people bring their guesses and their own ideas to the piece really readily, in a way that sometimes with representational work doesn't quite happen as much. And the last piece in the show is this really weird one that's called Filament, and it's a necklace that I made out of a floss container. So this is also a handmade silver chain. And my favorite part about this piece is the artist book that I made, that when it's being worn or when it's not on display, that sits inside of the floss container. With jewelry, I'm really interested in these ideas of like, what about a piece can be personal for the wearer, or something that only the person that, you know, owns the piece or wears it or handles it would know about. So because I love the book, it's on view in the exhibition too, but it's a similar concept to what some jewelers will do with like a brooch back, where it will reveal this whole other image, or sort of continue the narrative that you might see on the front. And the floss necklace here is, the floss container itself is coated in a 3D pen filament that I was playing around with, and pen and ink. And you can go to the next slide. And I just have a few shots, or maybe just 2 shots of the book itself. So this is a mix of collage, marker, and cutouts. And you can start to see there's some mica in there too. You can start to see some of these like material choices that I make repeating across the 2D work and some of the 3D work. Yeah, I think that's about all I have for you. Thank you so much. Sorry again about my internet cutting out. This is my Instagram and email if anyone wants to get in touch or chat more.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, now I'm going to skip down to Abigail. Okay, here we go. Take it away, Abby.
Hi, it's good to see everybody. I'm Abigal Wamboldt, and I am so appreciative that all of you guys showed up to listen to us tonight. I saw some of my people here who can't usually come to an artist talk because you live very far away. So it's always great to see support like that. So thank you guys so much. I have so enjoyed being part of this show. I was the last one in the gallery hanging up the night before the opening, as always. And it was really amazing to be in there actually and be in the gallery with everybody's work and just have it be quiet and silent and have time to walk around and really look at every piece. And it was just a really beautiful meditative moment for me before the whole thing, you know. We have the opening, there's lots of people, and I really enjoyed looking at your work in that moment. I always say that I create out of the memory of a sensation or from visual material that manifests itself in my imagination. And I think that's an important separation, because I think imagination is intentional. When we imagine something, we form it in our mind. And it might not be completely formed, but there's an image of something there. Whereas the memory of a sensation, it's much more felt, and it's less visual. And I think a lot of the time when I'm making, there is maybe initially something imagined. There's some kind of image in my mind that I'm planning on creating. But as I start making something, as I start making a piece, it really takes on a life of its own. And that memory of sensation and the tactile quality of playing with the materials, really, it kind of builds itself, and comes to life out of the experience of making it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the content, the meaning, and the reason behind these particular pieces. And you can go next, Sonia. These pieces are a lot about, I always say, the constant endurance of the human condition, that I'm interested in exploring that in my work. So this need to survive, right, that we have. And in order to survive, we need to be able to endure. We need to be able to endure on large scale, on small scale, whatever it is. You know, our level of endurance is relative, but everybody experiences that. And I wanted to, with these pieces, talk about growth and rebirth, and the process of going from, say, one stage of life to another stage of life, or the process of giving up a habit or something that's familiar in order to evolve and grow as a human. And I think that, you know, no matter what level we've had to do this at, everybody has had to do this. And it's not easy. Like, it's very painful to participate in that process of becoming better. Evolution, it hurts. And the thing that's crazy about it is that if you can get through that process of evolution, and come out the other side, the freedom that waits for you is really quite incredible. You can go to the next one. Thank you. So it's called, the whole series is called Yesterday's Bodies, that I have up in this show. And it's more about what we've left behind. So this, like, leaving behind of these past selves in order to evolve and come into this better place. And hopefully we're coming towards a better and better place, or a more evolved place as we go through life, right? So to me, at least, that's a big part of being human. We can go to the next one. Yeah, they're all kind of together there. You can go next. So I have worked this way in the past. I deal a lot frequently with achromatics, so black, white, and gray, or minimal color. And it's very easy for me to get lost in, you know, too many options. So a lot of the time will give myself rules that I have to work in black and white, or I have to work in a limited palette. I have to use a specific type of repetitive mark, like I did in the Yesterday's Body series. You can go next. So I am familiar with this type of working. This piece is from about probably 7 years ago at this point, but I wanted to put it in there just to sort of show you guys where these Yesterday's Bodies pieces started to originate. You can go next. This summer, my partner and I had the incredible pleasure of traveling to France, and we went to the Louvre, and I was so amazed to see all of these beautiful pieces that I've seen in textbooks for years, that I've shown to my students in slideshows, and that I've admired, you know, from a distance. To see them in person was really, really, really incredible. And you can see I have Da Vinci, and then we have Gentileschi. So Da Vinci is the Virgin on the Rocks, and Gentileschi is Judith slaying Holofernes. And I was so just in love with the incredible value contrast. Again, the color is a little bit low chroma, like we have pops of color here and there, but overall it's pretty desaturated. And then just the motion of the figures. And it brought me back to, again, to my education and thinking of all of the figure drawing I've done in the past and figure painting I've done in the past. And I used to be much more, I will say, realistic. It's always kind of been a line kind of abstract realism, I'll say a little bit, but I used to be a little more realistic, and it kind of brought me back to that and enjoying this incredible motion that these pieces had. You can go to the next. And then we came upon this incredible Anselm Kiefer, and I did not know this was in the Louvre, and then to come upon it was such a magical experience. And these two paintings, and this one in particular, it reminded me of the Yesterday's Body series that I'd actually started. You can go to the next one. That actually started when I was doing that big installation that I showed you guys. This piece was really the only one that I did during that time. So about 7 years ago, I made this piece. And for some reason, I just couldn't make any more like it. Like I started them and they weren't coming together, and I stopped. And eventually, just in my true fashion, the way I work, I moved on to something else and I let these go. You can go next. But seeing all these big, amazing pieces with this high contrast value, and then coming back to that piece, I wanted to try again to make some more of them, and to explore this mark. And it's really hard. I feel like these don't show the incredible level of detail that they have in the photograph. No matter what I do, I can never capture it. And in person, you really see the layers. There is graphite, there is paint, there is charcoal, it's just layers and layers of material that's built up in these tiny little lines with this little repetitive mark. You can go next. And so I started on these panel paintings, panel pieces that, again, they're mixed media. It's paint and charcoal, graphite. And I wanted something solid. I didn't want to work on paper. And so I started to just build these up on panel initially. And I did these several smaller pieces. You can go to the next one. Yeah, these are just the 3 that are in the show. You can go on to the next one. Here's a detail. This is the best detail shot I could get of all of this texture of the surface. And it's 2 different pieces put together, but the surface was initially black. And so you can see some of these areas where it looks like maybe the white of the paper is coming through, but it's actually not. It's the white of the panel coming through, but it's actually like a white line that's lost somewhere in there. Can go next. The bigger pieces that are on paper that we looked at, I had been working on vinyl for a while. These are the kind of intermediate paintings between the larger piece I showed you, the installation piece I showed you, and this Yesterday's Body series. I was working on these big pieces on leather or vinyl. And I had some issues with the material, so I had to stop making them. You can go to the next one. And I needed to find a surface. I wanted a surface that was similar to leather or similar to vinyl, but that was going to hold my material. I was having an issue with the chemistry and the acrylic. I was working with acrylic on them, and it's supposed to meld, but it didn't. The acrylic kept coming apart, kept coming off. So I did lose a few of these pieces. You can go to the next one. So that brings us back to Yesterday's Bodies. And this piece, I had just started layering paper. And I was trying to make a surface that had the same feeling of the pleather, or a feeling of leather. And I was really interested in this kind of like frayed edge that started to happen too. So I layered these big pieces of paper on top of each other in many layers. And I worked with matte medium to get them to stay together. And eventually the surface got thicker and it got tougher, and it's still not as tough as leather or pleather vinyl, but it does have a good substantial quality to it. You can keep going and go ahead. So what I will end with is I ask my students, what do you want the viewer to think when you look at a piece? And ultimately the viewer has liberty to think whatever they want, or what do you want the viewer to feel? And I think as an artist, even if a person interprets it in your work in whatever way they want, it's important to have an intention. And so I would really love if the viewer would come to this, and as they're looking at these ragged edges, and they're feeling this sort of struggle or pain of trying to evolve, the process of rebirth, the process of evolving, of becoming a more complete person, that they will look back, or you will look back at who you were in the past, and that you will be kind to that person, because that person had incredible discipline in order to become the person you are now. And that by sort of experiencing these frayed edges and these images of yesterday's bodies, we can remember that we all experience these things, and that constant endurance of the human condition is something that everybody experiences. That's it.
Thank you so much, Abby. Thank you to all of our artists. This was wonderful to hear just more about your work. So with that, I'd like to open it to a Q&A session. I guess I will start this because I have a really burning question that I need to ask now. But Catherine, I would love to hear more about how your more free studio practice with your paintings and mixed media work. How do you think that informs your more technical practice with your metalsmithing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I I could tell you it's a super clear connection, right? But I think the reality is that it's not always 100% connected. And I think that the different mediums and the different techniques, there are overlaps that I will speak to, but I think that part of what attracts me to having very different practices across is that it helps me continuously cultivate my creativity, because I think it's everyone who's an artist knows, like, it's really easy to get frustrated sometimes with a piece or a series or something. And so for me to be able to just jump to a totally different technique, it helps me keep in touch with that creativity. But I think in terms of the paintings impacting the metalsmithing, I think a lot of it is like building my confidence in my visual language. And so these lines that you'll see in the yellow areas with the black, that's a very similar drawing style to something that I'll do on the enamel. You can actually do painting enamels on top of the traditional technique is that you sift like a powdered glass enamel onto a piece of metal, bake it in the kiln, and then you can do some drawing and surface texture on top. And I think playing around with transparencies and things like that is something that I bring to my metalsmithing process. But a lot of it, like on an idea level or like a concept level, a lot of it is about intimacy. Like, I think that the intimacy of like an object you can hold in your hands, or a piece of jewelry, is something that I try to emulate with like different moments in my 2D work. And I think something else too, and I'll stop talking, but something else that I am grateful for is that 5 years ago, I was terrified of color. Like, I was not using a lot of color in my work at all. And being able to explore that in the space of painting, where I felt like the stakes are kind of high, but the material costs for me at least are a little bit lower than like if I'm working with silver or stones or things like that. Being able to play around with color in that space has allowed me to feel a lot more confident incorporating several different colors, or kind of knowing what might work well together in different materials too.
Thanks so much. I think that's really interesting what you brought up about intimacy, because all of these pieces that we've looked at today, and that's something that we haven't talked about yet as a group, is they're all really intimate pieces and intimate in different ways, from the intimacy of motherhood or the intimacy of materials or the intimacy of relationships and relationships with yourself and your own body and persona. So if anyone else has a question, or can just raise your hand and unmute yourself.
Carrie, I'm curious about setting up some of your photographs. They feel so organic, and I'm just curious, like, are you in the moment and it's just like this is the shot and you take it, or is there a little more like manufacturing that has to happen to get what you want?
It depends on the situation. So most of the time I think of something that I want to document, like making lunch or, this, like that was one, a lot of the earlier images are more like created, like the one where I'm on the computer. But I knew like sorry, yeah. So if you see the one with me negotiating with my 3-year-old with that piece of my oldest daughter needed her cast rewrapped. So I thought I want to document that I'm like the nurse here. So I put the camera up and I have an intervalometer remote and it takes pictures every 2 seconds. So I capture the whole scene and then I go through the pictures and see which ones really speak to me and sit and do what I'm trying to say. Most of the time these are real moments, but they're times that I just want to remember, I guess, is what it is. So
Thank you.
We noticed in your work, is that in most of these, this like really sharp, is that
sorry, I can't hear you. Maybe she
Sonia,
froze.
you froze.
am I back?
Yeah, you're back now. It was
Oh,
cutting
yeah.
out, so I couldn't really hear.
Something that we had talked about, was that there's a really sharp red in all or most of your pieces. Even like I'm looking at the one in the center, you're just talking about this, like just this little corner, on the couch. Is that something that's intentional or something that's just sort of come to be?
Yeah, no, it's not intentional. I think the most intentional photo was the one with the shoes and the red shirt. I picked the red shirt out. I wanted that for that picture. That one felt more like I was frustrated with picking my kids' shoes up around the trampoline every day. And I was like, I'm just gonna get all the shoes I can find in the basement and hold them all. And so that picture was very put together. But yeah, that's interesting that you noticed that.
And Abby, with your color as well, you said you go back and forth with using a limited palette or going to black and white. So what do you think drove, because your last show at Hera was with, if I can get there, was with these really vibrant pink pieces. What do you think brought you back to the black and white recently?
I mean, even these were limited palette. So this was just black and white and 2 colors, a red and a yellow.
Wow.
And then the black stands in for blue, so you can do a lot with that.
Mhm.
But if I don't give myself some rules, like if I'm feeling out of control in what I'm making, and especially if I'm making something new, like if I'm trying to build a different kind of surface or explore a new idea, whatever it is, I have to minimize something or it's too much. And I think that learning to edit like that, it's important. At least for me, it's been very important to edit what I let myself put into something. Um, because otherwise it will be like high chroma and super textured and like wild shapes and it ends up getting lost.
I have a question for kind of the whole group, because I know there's a lot of seasoned artists in here and not seasoned, all different kinds of artists. But what does anybody want to share what they do when they get stuck creatively? Because I definitely have had, especially like the last couple weeks, struggled with the work I'm currently working on and just curious if anybody has any interesting things that they do when they get stuck in a project or whatever they're working on.
I would love to know the answer to that too.
I can, oh,
Oh, go
someone else
ahead,
want to say
Kat.
something? Okay,
I'm done
I was just gonna say the having different mediums helps me, but I also I've been a little bit of a rut since installing the show. I was going, and then installed and like took a week-long break from creating stuff. And when I went to my studio again last night, I literally just was like, I'm gonna play around with this overhead projector I have that I haven't used much. So I think the main thing for me when I'm in a creative rut is like, what can I do that's really low stakes that just helps me like get back into the process and like the joy in the process. So because I a lot of times I'll build up ideas, like big ideas in my head. And then I get scared to start them. So I think starting with something that's like really, really low stakes, where you're just playing around, really helps me like tap back into it and feel more confident with like more conceptual or bigger pieces.
I was gonna say two exercises that I like to do, or I guess one exercise and one like part of my practice. So an exercise I do, and I do this with my students too, is a creative writing exercise and doing like an automatic sort of drawing or scribble, and just sort of closing your eyes sometimes even and letting your hand just do whatever it is. And then we do a creative writing assignment as well, where we just automatically write for 5 minutes. And sometimes for me, like I did this one where I just started writing about scrambled eggs for whatever reason. Like my brain felt like scrambled eggs. And then I was doing these weird like egg drawings. And then something new just always like sprouts out of it where you never thought you would go. And it helps bring some new sort of life to your practice. And something that I learned from a friend when I was in grad school that has really helped me as well is she called it a mountain and a river project. So a mountain being like you climb up, you get to the top, you have a beautiful view, you climb down and it's over. And then a river project in your studio where it can just continuously go on forever. And even if it eventually like goes into the ocean, then it's a whole ocean of ideas. So like she was doing like a series of photographs, like click and done for a mountain. And then she's worked on this river project of building like 1,000 different feathers for this like huge bird sculpture. So when she's like, can't think of a mountain, she'll just sit there and cut out little feathers. And I adapting that or adapting a sort of process like that has been really helpful for me.
Those are all really helpful. Thank you. Really inspiring ideas.
Any other ideas or comments in here before we sign off?
Thank you all
Well,
so much for coming. I just
yeah.
wanted to say that. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. This was wonderful. And if you want to share the link with anyone who was not able to make it tonight, check back on herrigallery.org and that will be available soon. Thank you to our amazing artists. It's just always great to have you all here together and have this community together. So thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.